TFS loyalists know all about this show. We love the purple, as you saw in our opening segment. If you missed that segment, by the way, check it out online at testosteronesports.com. We post the whole show there every week. But if you're a real loyalist, you also know we hate the Green Bay Packers. So it's not very often that I'd be willing to sport a number 4 jersey, Jeff, but this is a throwback Jets jersey, and don't you think it looks really nice?
Oh, man, that's like the best jersey I've seen all year, man. I'll tell you, for 18 years or something like that, we haven't been able to root for number 4. And so now that he's a Jet, we can really kind of come out of the proverbial football closet.
Isn't he awesome?
And declare our man love
awesome.
for Brett Favre. He's the best quarterback ever.
I think he might be. I mean, Joe Montana had a little bit of a weak arm.
Who?
Yeah, and you start looking at Dan Marino, never won a Super Bowl.
Man, was he Italian?
I don't know. I don't know, but casting our gaze across the history of the NFL, it's hard not to love on Brett Favre. And if you are a Jets fan, you absolutely have to be in love with him. The performance he had before their bye week, what did he throw, 13 touchdowns?
About that.
He was unbelievable. I think he had 1,200 yards in that game. He was fantastic. So Brett Favre owners, you definitely were loving up on him just as much as Jets fans were. And I think the trend continues, Jeff. I'm sporting the jersey. The Jets welcome the Cincinnati Bengals to town this week. Favre should be getting it going again.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome to watch. And not only that, but they're coming off their bye, so they've had an extra week to prepare for one of the worst defenses in the whole damn league. Like historically, it's going to be great.
Awesome.
Start Brett Favre. You could start Thomas Jones. You could start Tony Richardson, man. I mean, Chauncey Stuckey, Lavernius Coles. Don't they have another receiver? Oh, yeah, Cotchery.
Yeah,
too.
There you go.
Dustin Keller makes a good start.
Who's their kicker? Is it Ted Nugent?
They have Baker, their backup tight end. He could start.
Bubba Franks isn't bad.
He might throw it to Darrell Revis a time or two. They're going to crush here in this game. It's going to be interesting to see. And I'll tell you that one thing that I do think the Bengals will get something going here in this game because the Jets defense is definitely a bend, not break type of
Right,
game.
and we saw the Bengals last week. Carson Palmer stepped up in spite of rumors talking about his elbow possibly degenerative.
Still there.
Yeah, degenerative condition and all this stuff. Will he miss the rest of the season? La-da-da. He didn't look great. I watched the entire game against Dallas. He didn't look great, but he did toss 2 touchdowns, and he played through pain, which I think shows a lot of heart. Carson Palmer definitely wants to win. Although, at this point, outside of TJ Houshmandzadeh, who caught both of those touchdowns last week, it's tough to play any Bengals. I mean, it's dicey.
Yeah, man. I mean, if Palmer goes down, that would be the match that would light the whole village on fire and, free all the horses and rape all the women. it would just go down in a blaze of glory for the Bengals. I'm not kidding. It would be one of the worst things that could ever happen to their franchise because they're already in a huge hole.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to start any of the Bengals. And we did tell you last week that it might be time to bail out. Well, I think their situation is worse than AIG right now. So bail out as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's bad. The other thing we have to mention here is the reemergence potentially of a very troubled NFL player. Cedric Benson has landed on this squad. Last week was his first game of the season. He got 10 touches, and they're already starting to talk about a possibility that he could usurp Chris Perry for the starting gig. So fantasy owners need to at least keep an eye on that situation.
Definitely keep an eye on that situation. The guy who's going to suffer the most without Palmer is going to be Houshmandzadeh for sure.
Because everybody else sucks.
And he's a must start as long as Palmer's there, but they have Fitzpatrick. So if that happens, you're going to be able to spot start the running game from Cincinnati, and that's about it.
Carolina against Tampa Bay. The next one we're going to break down here for you. Tampa Bay, it's looking like in this game going to be going back to Jeff Garcia at the quarterback position after Brian Griese took the helm for several weeks. Now, Tampa is a team that has won some games in a scrappy fashion. None of their players are really playing at a high level from a fantasy perspective. Ernest Graham has masked some pretty poor performances with some late touchdowns and some long runs. So looking at this game, playing against the Carolina team that seems to be heating up right now, I'm wondering if Tampa might get done in their own house here.
Well, I'll tell you, they've been really tough in the last few weeks against their opponents. They're 2-3 or 2-1 in the last 3 weeks. They won a couple tough ones on the road. They beat some good teams, and now here they face their big division rival. Carolina's really hot, and they have been all season so far. And so it's going to be interesting for me to watch this game. I do feel like it's going to be a low-scoring affair. and I really don't like many of the fantasy plays, except for I do like Steve Smith to kind of do his thing and potentially have a long score. It's a roll of the dice, but at the same time, he's a nice guy to roll with. And then also, I do like Jonathan Stewart's skill set against this Tampa 2 style of defense, as opposed to D'Angelo Williams. If you've got both backs in your league, if it's a dynasty league, then you should be very proud because it's a great rushing attack. If either one of those guys were to get injured, the other would star, but you're not going to be able to trust either of them for now.
Yeah, exactly. So one of our fantasy junkies out there emailed in a question. I meant to print it up and bring it in, but he essentially was asking if the D'Angelo Williams game from a week ago was a trend or a mirage. And I'm here to say that it's a trend in that he'll play really well like that against exploitable defenses. It's not a trend that he's going to do that every week. And this week, it's definitely a case of Jonathan Stewart being the better back to face the Tampa-type defense, the Tampa 2 defense. A power back is going to be a better play here. I think you want to avoid chasing your stat line here with D'Angelo Williams. I completely concur on the Steve Smith thing. I think he's probably the best fantasy play in the game.
Yeah, and also, as far as D'Angelo is concerned, and momentum's a real big thing in the NFL, so he could keep that momentum going, and as players start to break out, they tend to stay at that level, but you can't expect, the gaudy 3-touchdown game. It'll be 1 touchdown if he gets in, and it could be 100 all-purpose yards.
Maybe a long play.
Still a good stat line for a guy, and if you're in a really tight spot, you could probably start them both, so it wouldn't be too bad.
The St. Louis Rams are in a really tight spot. Their squad beginning to really kind of fall apart at the seams. They got rid of their coach, Scott Linehan, before their bye week. Now they're coming off of the bye week. They've reinserted Mark Bulger as their starting quarterback here. They're going to be playing against the Washington Redskins, who continue to knock down foe after foe after foe. St. Louis traveling to Washington. Jeff, how much time do we need to spend breaking this matchup
Not
down?
too much. It's going to be an absolute drubbing. You can pretty much play all your Redskins. Santana Moss, a great play here. Clint Portis going to probably have 2 touchdowns. Look, the Redskins are one of the hottest teams in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And they're coming off of back-to-back weeks where they went to Dallas and beat Dallas. Then they went to Philadelphia and beat Philadelphia, which are major games for them in the league's toughest division.
Absolutely.
So they're really doing well, and I think that it continues here to the tune of an ass-kicking, to be certain. So
yeah, Santana Moss owners were really pissed last week when he had no catches in that entire game. He's been so hot. That's a mirage. Just go ahead and keep him in your lineup. He's going to hook up with Jason Campbell here. But on the flip side, should you start Steven Jackson?
I think you probably have to if you have him in your lineup. When he's active, you got to go with him. If you're in a 2 running back only format, you might find a guy who's got a better matchup here this weekend. If you're choosing between him and Brandon Jacobs, then go ahead and put him on your bench. Start Brandon Jacobs. If you're choosing him and LJ, it might be a little bit more of a toss-up, depending on the matchup.
Well, LJ's on bye.
Well, then that makes it easy. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying?
Right.
What if you have him, Steven Jackson, and Thomas Jones? Then you might be able to reserve Steven Jackson this weekend because it is such a horribly tough matchup.
Yeah, tough matchup. The Jags playing against the Broncos. Now, Denver was a team that started the season off very, very hot. Kind of cooling down just a little bit of late. We haven't seen the enormous numbers from Jay Cutler in that passing game, and this is kind of what teams that are led by a passing game are kind of want to do. They blow up for short periods, and then they kind of shrink back a little. So Jeff, I'm wondering if we're beginning to see some cracks in Denver's game plan here. Are they coming back to the pack a little bit offensively, or do you expect a big outing here?
Well, I'll tell you that they lived and died with Brandon Marshall pretty much right away. I know he missed that first game due to suspension, but he beat everybody once he came back, and he had a monster game right there. And I think that Tampa Bay knew that they had a chance to win that game if they could neutralize Brandon Marshall. They held him to 3 catches and almost won that game. So now here we see another situation. The Jags have to be watching tape of that game saying, if we can stop Brandon Marshall, we've got a chance to win that game. And then the other main factor here for the Broncos is they've got some serious injury issues.
Absolutely.
Both starting tight end Tony Scheffler and starting tailback Selvin Young suffered groin injuries in their last game against Tampa, so they won't play in this game. And we're going to see a couple new faces. Daniel Graham makes a start, as well as Andre Hall. And if you have Andre Hall, you've been sitting there, this is our chance to see him with the workload for the first time. I'm not necessarily saying start him because the Jags are good on defense, but you want to watch and see what he does because he's got to look at it like, this is my opportunity to be the featured guy for Denver's offense.
Right. Well, anybody that's paid attention to the show for any period of time know about the phrase I've coined, the Shanahan job. I mean, basically, Mike Shanahan collects all these running backs together. He shakes them up really hard like this, throws them out on the table, and, just kind of waits to see what happens. That's a Shanahan job. So I think that it wouldn't surprise me if Hall got it going a little bit in this game, because that's how Denver rolls on offense. You never know which one of these running backs is going to spurt off, as it will. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch. Selvin Young has not been very impressive, and to me, until Denver establishes a routine running game, they're going to be this team that can blow up big one week and then kind of recoil another week. It could also be Michael Pittman. So we're going to watch that Shanahan job play out here.
Well, he's done a nice job in the past. He was able to massage the ego of Clint Portis to get his talent to spit out.
Right.
And he did that with Mike Anderson, massage the talent, get it to spit out, And
Terrell Davis was erupting regularly.
Yeah, like the guy lived on Viagra or something. It was crazy.
Amazing.
He was always up for it.
The final matchup of this segment here, Green Bay against Seattle, traveling to the Pacific Northwest to play the lowly Seahawks. Now, although Green Bay is definitely missing good old number 4 as I sport the jersey here.
He's so awesome, man.
Their quarterback Aaron Rodgers is playing at a pretty high level. Although they did lose last week, he played in spite of the shoulder injury and played pretty damn well.
I don't get how they lost that game last week. I mean, when your quarterback puts up over 300 yards and you're able to move the ball in the ground and you're able to throw the ball like that and get into the end zone, they never should have lost to the Falcons.
Not at home.
They got beat at home by a subpar team. That's not playoff caliber talent football. They lost Chad Clifton in that game. That's a major development. I think it's going to be tougher than people think for Green Bay here this week. They're down 3 games in a row after starting off 2-0. And now what if they lose again? We'll be dancing in the streets here in Minnesota again, and it's just going to be fantastic. But it's going to be tough. Seattle finally starting to get healthy at wide receiver, but they've had to put a couple guys on IR. Corn Robinson didn't last. Or wait, no, that's a different Robinson I'm thinking of. It doesn't really matter.
Laurent Robinson?
Yeah, Corn Robinson sucks anyway. But Deion Branch still not being effective. So it's going to be tough to find any real good fantasy production.
I think Green Bay is going to win this game.
Okay.
I mean, I really honestly do. Aaron Rodgers proved a lot to me last week. When he came into this season, the big knock on him was the guy's injury prone. He's never started a game. He's played in 2 games, meaningful minutes. He got hurt in both of those 2 games. This was Aaron Rodgers' chance to show us that he was tough, and he was tough. He came out and threw 2 touchdowns. He threw a touchdown the week before that to Greg Jennings after the shoulder injury. So I know Aaron Rodgers has been practicing this week. I think you play him. I think you go ahead and start Greg Jennings as well. Donald Driver is even startable in certain situations if need be. I think Green Bay is just a much better team right now than Seattle. Let's not forget, Jeff, Seattle got their asses handed to them last week, granted by the Giants, but Seattle's just not a very good team.
Yeah,
right now.
you're starting to make me convince yourself. I do like John Carlson. If you're in a bye-week pinch, I think he could get into the end zone this weekend. Matt Hasselbeck has no one else really to throw the rock to.
Right, and Sammy Morris, still not a guy you want to play, but he's getting close to a return, and all that really does is kill Julius Jones' value. So if you still have Julius Jones, you might be able to trade him. Now is a good time to move him, because as soon as Morris starts getting more carries, Julius Jones' value going to fall back down again. So we're going to take one more break and be back with the final segment of matchups. We've run a little bit long here, but we still want to remind you to come onto the site, testosteronesports.com. As soon as this show is over, we want to talk to you about all the injury updates and all the guys you want to play this week in your fantasy football league. Testosteronesports.com, and click on the Fat Chat icon. We'll be back right after this to close the show.
Yeah.